genocide and continue to resist the violence of settler colonialism today. My name is Carrie Wiggum. I'm the co-director of the Institute for Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention. On behalf of myself and my fellow co-director, Max Pensky, we're so happy that you're here for this first public talk of the spring 2024 semester. Our first visiting practitioner, we couldn't be more thrilled to have with us Victor Ochen. Victor Ochen is the founder and executive director of African Youth Initiative Network. Born in northern Uganda, he spent 21 years of his childhood as a refugee in the camps where he survived on one meal a day for over 7 years. He grew up amidst violent conflict that displaced over 3 million people, where 60,000 or more children were abducted and forcibly recruited as child soldiers, and that includes his own brother. His organization has so far provided reconstructive medical repair to over 21,000 war victims of rape, mutilation, and gunshots. Challenged by the hardships of war and poverty while living in the camps at the age of 13 years, Ochen formed a peace club and bravely led the anti-child soldiers recruitment campaign amidst the war in northern Uganda. He grew up to become one of the most important figures in Africa, a key reference where it comes to struggles for human rights and justice, a product of resilience, a personification of struggle. He's a lead example on tolerance and nonviolent activism, and he's creatively working to address the root causes of conflict in Africa. Forbes magazine named Ochen in 2015 one of the 10 most powerful men in Africa, while Archbishop Desmond Tutu attested that my heart swells with joy to see Ochen as one of the new hopes for Africa. He's the first Ugandan and the youngest ever African nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2015. We're so honored to have him join us this week here at Binghamton University. Please join me in welcoming Victor Ochen.
Thank you so much, Kerry, for the gracious introduction. I am delighted to be here today. I appreciate the leadership of the university, Binghamton University, for welcoming me, and most importantly also to introduce me, to learn and share my stories with the students and other practitioners who are with us here. It's my sincere gratitude that I stand before you today completely humbled, and it's been a fantastic week long of engagement in many classes. We had a massive number of dialogues and discussions and all that. Also, I bring with me so much joy that subjects of this nature, and the issues and the matters of concerning genocides and mass atrocities around the world is becoming key issues, key topic of discussions at a global space. You know, no matter how we look at it, war is happening, suffering is happening in many parts of the world, and people are dying, people are suffering, people are in need. The desperation is increasing every single day. And it also takes a very humble and committed institution like one we have here today to commit to preparing the new generations of leaders who are willing and they are determined and are committed to preventing mass atrocities, especially genocide, among others. What we can always celebrate is I come not an expert, but I come in as a practitioner. I'm following the footsteps of fantastic leaders who came before me, but also most importantly, to try to share my stories. As we always know that first-hand experience and opportunity, it may not necessarily, be everything that you want to know, but at least carry some truth. So my purpose of coming here to come and provide for you practical real-life experience from what I live, not what I studied as such. It won't be exactly absolute accuracy, but it will be carrying massive amount of truth to what we know and what we see on the ground. If I had an opportunity to redo life again, I would probably ask myself, where pitch of change? And I think this is the kind of question that I asked myself when I was a child, when I was growing up in the northern part of Uganda, in the internally displaced people's camp. It was at a point you would wonder, do you belong in the right community? Do you really belong in the right country? In a way that you start imagining if for some reason what is meant for the beautiful part of this world is not yours as for other people. But of course, when you talk about justice, when you talk about suffering, when you talk about war, when you talk about displacement, refugee life, life of despair, life of fear, these are things that I lived up in. Of course, it also shaped my life, the discipline, the choices, the hope I decided to build, I decided to embrace, was pretty much shaped by my history in a way that I decided to say that, you know what, in as much as I've seen it all, but I also want to be a reason for an end war. That was a massive commitment. Of course, that it may not be easy at all, but you have to trust in your choices, you have to trust in your commitment. As we went on, I was like another person, like many others. I was born with rights and the bustling heart of life. And then, like another person, I was hoping maybe I would also grow up to become a pilot or to become an important person in society. Also, we were born as love. We saw our parents struggle days and nights trying to raise for us what to eat, what to drink, where to sleep, and most importantly, in the midst of the darkness of suffering and war, we were still nurtured and told and taught how to love, and we did everything we could to patiently listen and admire our parents who protected us all hands of war. It was intentions, they did what they could. There are also moments they couldn't match. So the bit they did to us helped us to grow up to know. So amidst all that, of course, the miracles also kept on coming and emerging to grow up with unique capacities. To commit, we kept on learning, evolving, but also we adapted to the change that came with crisis and suffering. We became resilient in the face of adversity. And of course, not everybody who went through what I went through would survive. Majority didn't make it, but I was among the few people who made it. But what we knew, what we were sure that with every sun and with every sunset, we move forward with absolute thirst for peace. We want to be at peace. We are praying and yearning for peace in our communities. We want to live to see the next day. Working with great determination, we decided that let us be part of change. Let us embrace our potential. And we decided to treat wounded intentionally to heal those who have been suffering. And we worked to ensure that all those who were wounded during war received attention and support they needed in order for them to survive. Also, our work to concern and heal the community became more important in creating hope among tens of thousands of formerly abducted children who were recruited as child soldiers, and we supported their and certainly their communities. So we are proud that for 20,000 victims of war, those whose lips, nose, ears, hands were cut off, we gave them opportunity to regain their dignity and restore health to society. And that became the basis for them to look at life differently. They started wondering what life looked like with basic minimum potential. They resumed their functionality in the society. Some of them, their leadership potential, became leaders, political leaders. Some resumed schooling, some even not. With this kind of better work and compassion, it led us to unimaginable heights in society. We became accepted. Not only about us being accepted as individuals, but our call for peace, our call to action to peace became accepted. We got the audience of the authority. We started attracting the admiration of the national community. And of course, with each experience, our minds even gain more knowledge and what us we chose the noble path to peace as opposed to the path to malicious action. We said no to revenge, we said no to retaliation, and we said let us take to the path to peace as opposed to path to revenge and retaliation. We decided to pursue peace, and of course we continued, and most interestingly pursued with all the greater potential. We built amongst our community the culture of tolerance. I'm aware that it's our commitment that even though as young Ugandans, as young Africans, we are not responsible for the past injustice, or we are not responsible for the ongoing war, we knew it was our responsibility to make sure it does not happen again. It was also our responsibility to make sure that we bring an end to the ongoing conflict. With that convictions that came in, we kept on taking baby steps, and we made some decisions that became impactful at our local level, but also at international level, which I will share more later on. And most importantly, we started promoting the agenda of equality, of equal rights in our society, aware that we are born as a human race. We come from the same source of origin, and we share a unique fate, and that is humanity. So to us, it was not difficult to answer the question whether should I treat the survivors or should I treat the perpetrator. We focused on humanity. So that gave us opportunity to cut across, to communicate to both sides of the society. Of course, notwithstanding our apparent differences in the society, because every war, every suffering we saw in the community had a history. The history may be because they were revenging, they were retaliating for the crimes committed several years ago to where we are today. We also knew there were questions of boundaries and borders that was around us. There were also religious questions. We had moments where we were suffering from the rebel, guided by the principles of the Lord Resistance Army. And we're wondering, was Lord Jesus about killing? Was Lord Jesus about atrocities, about abduction? But of course, also they went into change into another, gave it an Islamic connotation. So then brought in the religious question at some point. So we had that religious case. Of course, the gender issue came in along the way, but we knew we had to commit to a unifying factor, which would ultimately reconcile our intellect with our potential for good. Even though we are going through so much at time, the question we kept on asking, what is that potential that we have for good? And I'm happy that I was part of the crusade that kept working in that space. This is the defining character that led us to where we are today. And also, this is what we learned from the history that we know for sure that so many great leaders left for us traits to follow. And I come from Africa, a continent so prominent for its legendary leaders. You heard about when Professor Kerry was introducing, talked about Archbishop Desmond Tutu, one of the most iconic figures. The late Archbishop Tutu was one of the most iconic figures. The image, the brand of peace and reconciliation, these are the people whose stories, whose identity, whose shadows kept on yielding and giving us hope to look the world at different levels. But of course, opportunities kept on propping up, and we wanted to always promote a single, most universal attribute, which we all claim, which is humanity. And we knew for sure that we don't have to go deeper into this, describing who is a victim, who is a perpetrator, who should be supported, who should not be supported. And of course, there are dire moments that we were economically constrained with what we could do. The limitation we had was based on our economic inability or economic ability. Time and again, we kept on doing what we wanted to do, which is now the commitment that we carried with us always that whether we like it or not, we need to celebrate who we are. We have overcome so much, and we have to continue carrying with us the hope that we keep on promoting in the community. I thought I should give the aspiration, the prospect, the journey of what motivated us. And this is the reason why we thought, let us do it on our own. We acknowledge that, yeah, we are part of it. We cannot move away from it. We have to be part of the development we have in society. Back to now, then, what do we do? We started the initiative. A follow-up to the Peace Club I started when I was 13 years in the camp. I was battling with my life, trying to study like any other persons in the community, surviving war and atrocities every day. And then most importantly, the point that we said, how long can this go? How long can we keep on treating the war wounds? How long can we keep on waiting for other people to deliver for us justice? And then we said, let us do it ourselves. And that's why we ventured into medical and psychosocial rehabilitation, intentionally pursuing it through our agenda as African Youth Initiative Network, which is premised on the pillar of supporting the weak and the vulnerable in society, and also promoting justice and accountability. We have been key players. We became the first local African initiative that will openly promote the International Criminal Court, and Uganda being the first situation country in Africa, in the world, before the International Criminal Court. My organization became the first organization ever to become the intermediary NGO working to mobilize victims to participate as witnesses before the International Criminal Court. So that gave us a mileage. So the question is, should justice be done by who? What is justice? One reason why we embarked on doing what we are doing was, when we worked to promote justice and peace and accountability and human rights in the community, the big question was, whose justice? Is it our justice? Is it the government justice? Is it the international community's definition of justice? But when we went to the community, and an old man asked us and said, you are talking about justice, but how can I talk about justice? How can I talk about peace when my two girls were abducted by the rebels? They were sexually abused and they are home here with me without any medical treatment. I can't talk about justice when I see my own daughters are going through dire medical needs that I can't help them. And then he said also, how can I talk about peace and reconciliation when my only son was taken as a child soldier and he has not come? And then we realized that not until we address the question of the victims' justice, where until we heal people physically and emotionally, it will always be difficult for us to heal them historically. It now brings me to what I was talking about, I introduced earlier on. Why do people fight? Why mass atrocities happen? And why violence reoccur? I think this is the epicenter of our being here. We looked at it from genocide and mass atrocities prevention. There's always a history. You know, history can become the most dangerous weapon if we depend on who uses it. History can be a very dangerous tool for revenge. So in every community, in every society, there is always a history that can be manipulated for that particular moment. And then, of course, every history is tied to the culture. And technically, in the intellectual space, maybe you prefer to be an ideology that gets built over time. It does not come from the space. Genocide or atrocities is not discussed always in the main streets or in the public offices. It starts from home. It starts in our kitchen. It starts in our compound.
what we pass on to our children, what we tell our children, that's when we start building and nurturing ideologies or creating a new culture. Then bring that environment of otherizing other people, otherization, those ones, then create an environment of them versus us. When we go through these root causes of atrocities, I would want to quote a statement that says that, the best moment to repair our roof is when the sun is still shining. Because you don't have to wait when it's raining and you start repairing the roof. You have to do it when the sun is still shining. And then it comes into, when is the best moment to prevent genocide? When is the best moment to prevent mass atrocities? Is it when atrocities is already happening? Or when it's just about to happen? Or we can start planting in the seeds of prevention earlier on. So contextualizing that the best moment to repair our roof is when the sun is still shining. Would be the best moment to prevent genocide is to begin now when there's no genocide, to continue doing it when there is genocide. Like we say, that when is the best moment to promote peace? The best moment to promote peace is when there is peace and when there is war. You don't have to wait until when there's only war that start talking about peace. I'm saying so because looking from where I come from, Uganda, one of the countries in Africa which has never seen a peaceful political transition since independence 61 years ago. So you wonder, we are a small country of almost 50 million people, I would say, right now. But for 61 years, we have never seen any peaceful political change. It's been war after war. And that is really, it can tell you that the country will always be we always have to be ready for some more difficult times when it comes to political change. The question is, should change be that painful? Where people are displaced, where people are killed, where children are maimed, when women are sexually abused, all population are harassed. And the question is, if that becomes a trajectory, that means it always anticipates that the next process of change will cost more life. To make this a dialogue, which is about asking the questions and changing in things here and there, I want us to have a feeling, who should we put at the epicenter, or should be at the center of our intervention when it comes to genocide and mass atrocities prevention? Is it about the system? Is it about the people? And given our economic struggle, in most cases, the poorest sector of any intervention when it comes to human rights department, human rights peace building department, justice and accountability sectors, it doesn't have so much resources compared to others. Look at how the world is spending enormous amount of resources in weaponizing ourselves. Have you ever thought about one missile, how much it costs? Imagine if the world would decide to say that tomorrow, all the missiles we are going to find, first of all, monetize it and send that money towards promoting peace and atrocities prevention across universities. Think about the amount of resources the universities would have. But is it a priority? It's not a priority. Because this department, people overlook. And it's only when things are so bad that they start talking about it. But, when it comes to resource allocation, it's always has the limited support and all that. But every movement comes with a particular strength. And somebody asked me a few days ago, where do I find my strength in what I do? I have spent my entire childhood surviving war. I also have spent so far my adult life trying to heal the war wounds, trying to support the post-conflict recovery. But is it fun? It's exhausting, I can say it's exhausting. And if it's exhausting, what do I do to keep afloat? reports. Yeah, when we started the work we wanted to do, it was about supporting our people who are desperate and in dire need of support. And then we gave them opportunity to heal and become part of the society again. But the outcome of our work became a motivation to us. Slowly, it got to the attention of international communities, universities, United Nations, international organizations got to know about what we're doing. It became an inspiration to international communities. But then the question comes, how much longer can we do what we're doing? And that's why we say now, instead of working primarily to only heal the wounds as a result of war, let us now work more to prevent even atrocities, to prevent even more suffering. And that's why we are here today to be part of the discussion. And like I said it, my coming here as a practitioner, I do not bring in the most eloquent, fact-based, but I just bring in a crude, organic truth from the field. And it's up to you, the experts, to help me filter it. How does that suit the international mechanisms and system in place? So that's why I'm really, really excited. So I am sure with this brief knowledge of who I am, this brief background of what I have given you, you are ready to ask me more questions so that we can make the dialogue. Thank you so much. I'm open to questions. So, yes, let's begin with you.
Thank you so much for your introduction. I wanted to ask, in one of the classes that you came into this week, you mentioned how sometimes, or it's not uncommon for perpetrators to be motivated to continue to act and perform atrocities with the motivation that they would, if they gave themselves to the ICC to be trialed, that they would go on a plane or they would be seen on TV, and especially with your focus on empowering victims. I was just wondering what your insight was into that, what your thoughts were in terms of social media coverage when it comes to that kind of thing with perpetrators, and seeing that on one side it's good that media covers it so that there's an awareness to the atrocities that are happening in the world, but then on the other side, there's also this motivation for potentially the continuation of those atrocities.
Oh yeah, I forgot your name again. Leticia. Leticia is referring to the testimony I told about yesterday in one of the classes, where when I went to Central African Republic, I was meeting with this young group of militia group, young soldiers, the militia groups, and then the rebel groups, and then the young man asked me and said, I want to be taken to the International Criminal Court. And I said, why do you want to be taken to the National Criminal Court? And then he said, I am not educated, I'm just a soldier here in the bush. I think I should be taken to the National Criminal Court because that is the only opportunity I'll be on the television. That's the only opportunity I'll board the plane. And that's my chance to go to Europe. And that's my chance to wear suits. So we're discussing about it and said, look, in an effort to counter, to administer international criminal justice, in one way or another, is a motivation for young people who are poor, who are powerless, who are aimless, and who feel they don't have any opportunity. But the only chance for them to do that is to commit atrocities. So she's asking, where do we see the aspect of social media and technology, if I could say technology, in amplifying such kind of motivation among the young people? Yeah, this is a very good question because yes, it's about also, I wouldn't say there's one of answer to that, but I would just say yes, technology can be a good platform to counter the narrative, to provide the truth and accuracy of what situations look like. If it's also not used perfectly, can be problematic. So yes, but we cannot stop them from watching television. But I think it's important for a meaningful and sincere engagement with this kind of young people to understand that the reason why somebody gets taken to National Criminal Court is because of such and such a crime. Before you think about going to International Criminal Court, there's also avenues that you can make meaning of your life and achieve all that you want to. Maybe you can board the plane by becoming non-violent, there are so many ways. You can go back to school, you can resume all that. But of course, that is on a humanitarian ground. But let's look at it also this way, that it's also a reawakening opportunity for international communities, that as we seek to conduct such trials, what is the unintended consequences? One of them, it's a motivation. Now that we've really known this, it motivates our young people to commit more atrocities so that they can also qualify to board the plane to come to The Hague. And I come from Uganda, where Dominic Ongwen is now being sentenced and serving his prisons in Norway. And people are even saying now he has moved from The Hague to Norway. This guy is now touring the entire Europe because of the crime he committed. So these are the kind of discussion that should really be sparking a new thinking. Because to many Ugandans who wanted to be tried home and serve the prison sentence back home, which they say does not meet international standard in terms of human rights and all those things. But if you look at the history of this engagement, I think you want to create an environment where there are sufficient punitive measures that can also be a deterrent opportunity for crimes to be committed. Otherwise, making it too soft. And by the way, for information, when having been serving his trial process in The Hague, he has already got more than 2 children. He has been having his access and rights to his women, and is producing more children in captivity, and is also even sending more money to his other family members back home in Uganda, and that hurts the victims. So the question is, whose justice? I think that's a very important question to think about, to provoke that kind of discussion. Why should he be given privileges to even have children, how his women are flown? Imagine the ticket the women are flown every often from Uganda to Europe. Wouldn't that money be working better, used better in a better way to even maybe just drill a borehole to serve the community that suffer from these atrocities? Thank you.
My question is, what is the role of the everyday person in peace building? Like, what could someone like us do to contribute to the peace building process?
Oh yeah, what's the role of everybody's, everybody's?
Just like an everyday person.
Or everyday person. I think, I do believe that in our own unique ways, there's always a relative power when we come together. We all decide to stand up and present our voices against injustice as a collective community of humanity. There's always more opportunity there in terms of, you don't outsource that peace building is their work. There's always a problem that people thought all along that conflict or war was an African thing, was a Middle Eastern thing. And with the recent conflict we're seeing in Europe and in the Middle East, the intensity of conflict in the Middle East, I think, to be honest, Europe and America were taken unaware. They were taken off guard that, oh, this kind of conflict can still happen in Europe of today, when they saw what the destruction happening in Ukraine and all that. So somehow there's always been that perception that war and suffering is a distant reality. And that's why also you look at the framing of humanitarian response and mechanism has always been super Eurocentric, and super power oriented in a way that humanitarian support is primarily always has to trickle from the global north to the global south. And a lot of people never expected that there will be a moment that the global north will be in need for support. So when you ask about what's the role of everyday, I think like what the university is doing today, it's like, let's put ourselves in the world. It's a garden. It's an opportunity. It's a garden where we can plant all sorts of seeds. You know, university today has brought students, and they're all discussing and talking about how to prevent atrocities. And I'm sure the university and the professors and experts around are nurturing that seeds which is already been planted, seeds of peace, seeds of tolerance, seeds of inclusion. And then as it keeps on nurturing, you know, you're nurturing by giving opportunity for learning, protecting from the bushfires of hatred, of racism, from the pest of intolerance and all this kind of thing. So that's when we keep on nurturing. I'm just giving an example from the university. We keep on nurturing, and each of us grows as a peace builder. Each of us grows to bear fruits and seeds of peace. Sooner or later, we're going to form the forest of peacemakers. And when you form the forest of peacemakers, look at how much shades of hope, shades of opportunity, the trees that provide fruits for other creatures, birds and insects and humanity. So it comes down to each of us, we are agents for peace. We are all seeds of peace. That's all about, are we willing to be nurtured as trees of peacemakers? Are we willing to form a force to make a forest of peacemakers so that we can all stand and guard the land that we all love so much, the planet that we share? So I think every day is in our own aspect, whether you're a driver, whether you're a pilot, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a doctor, I think that's also what we ask ourselves. Regardless of what you do, whether you're a swimmer, give us where's the peace building, where's the peace in the swimming you do, where's the peace in agriculture you do. So there are so many ways you can do, whether the engineers, I think the world has become very capable and competent in developing even the weapons of mass destruction. Why are these people? They're engineers. Maybe sooner or later we shall start talking. What would happen if the engineers said we are not going to produce any more weapons of mass destruction? Because when it comes, we are not immune either. And yeah, we can do our best. We can step forward and do what we can. Thank you. Let's come to you, then come to you, sister. Then.
Thank you. As a practitioner, I would like to ask you how you see the factors, especially in Uganda. What do you think are the pressing factors for now that practitioners in peace building can focus on, especially that Uganda is now preparing for elections, which will be, I think, one of the most contested in terms of ideology and election issues. How do you look at that as a transition? Also, in general, what do you think there are factors? Because you mentioned something like family narratives to break the cycle of violence and how they differ sometimes from public narratives. So how do you look at those elements, and how do you define the most pressing factors of conflict in Uganda?
Oh yeah, thank you. About Uganda, we have had always very significant negative political campaigns and political leadership. Like I said we are one of the countries in the region which we have never seen peaceful political change. And history has proven very clearly that any kind of government that has taken that direction is never ended well. And that kind of fear is huge in the heart of the population. And of course, we cannot turn our back and look other ways. We need to focus on it, but also we need to be aware that we may not stop it completely, but we shouldn't accept it either. First of all, the first step is to agree to the fact that it's unacceptable. Unacceptable by everybody, unacceptable by the citizen, unacceptable by the national communities, and then we start now looking deeper into how do we slowly try to, as much as possible, pave the ways towards reconciliation, pave the ways towards opening up dimension. Uganda, which is a country I love so dearly, deserves change. Uganda deserve change. But the question is, are Ugandans ready for change? Yes, they are ready for change. The big question is, are Ugandans prepared for change? That's where the dilemma is. Because spaces have not been opened wide enough for people to openly and actually have this mutually respectful discussion. So that aspect of preparation for change, we now look at it being a very specific, changing from the current government. How are we going to change from the current government to the next government, or from the current leader to the next leader? Then the big picture is, what will change look like in a new government or under a new leader? So there's changing from, and then what will the country look like? Because demographically, Uganda is a country of 70% of the population are below 30 years. And when you look at it even more critically, take it to 40 years where the current government has been in power, is now coming to 40 years, you find more than 85% of the population of the country were born under this regime, were born or grew or understand or were taught or believed, were forced to believe in the ideology of the current regime. So that means, if you look at it also, what are the values of the current regime? One of them, corruption with absolute impunity. That's a bad culture. When you come to power, you don't leave. Stay as long as you can still work. That's a bad culture. Staff, fill up the government position with your family members, regardless of how incompetent they are. That's a bad culture. Marginalize other regions so that you can take it all. So imagine, for 89 or 90% of the population believing in that way of leadership, it will take a lot of time to decongest, deconflict, and probably demilitarize the concept of politics in the country. So it's a big call, but of course it's a clear call and something that we should work towards. I do believe right now there are already conversations starting, as unwanted as it is. At least it's a sign that people are getting also pissed off by waiting for change in a way that they are not expecting, and the chances are even getting more minimal. So I think preparation is needed. Prepare the population, define the way forward, also make it everybody's concern. We don't need to leave changing the country to political parties, because we have a country where political parties have all been formed along tribal lines. So the risk of supporting political parties is so high that you're supporting a tribe. So the point is, how do we now work beyond, navigate through the terrains of tribal ingredients in the African or Ugandan democracy? So it's a big issue, it's a big question. You might want to support party A, but remember, they have a tribal stronghold. And I think this is where the problem comes. Yes.
Yeah. My question is for the Acholi community, especially the brutal rejection of the family returnees, back from their homes, and with what the abducted child soldiers have done, and transitioning now from victims to perpetrators. I was wondering, and I guess you mentioned in one of our classes that your own brother has not returned until date. So if he steps tomorrow in your compound, or maybe at your compound, are you going to consider him as a perpetrator or a victim?
Oh yeah, it's a big question. As you said, over 60,000 children were taken as child soldiers. And to date, maybe only 30,000 have been known to have either come back or they lead up to their death. But over 35,000, nobody knows what happened to them. And unfortunately, their families are waiting for them to come back. And they've waited for long. The minimum they've waited for is 20 years. And there's no feedback. The government is also quiet about it. They're unable to provide any information. International communities like Red Cross are not providing any information. Everybody has just kept quiet about it. And it's something that is burning. Like I said, including my own brother was taken and he has not come back. So the question is, do you regard them when they come as perpetrators? or as war victims. I think it would also be wrong to generalize that every child soldiers that was taken is a perpetrator. Somebody was taken as a child, was recruited, was commanded to do certain things. Sometimes they did it for survival. Some of them actually were forced, before they were taken, some of them were forced to kill their own parents, or to kill their family members, or to rape their own sisters, in a way that they will never want to come back home. So some say, I'd rather die because even if I go back home, I will not be accepted. So the communities have struggled to accept this kind of persons in a way, but of course in every conflict there's always going to be stigma, there's going to be issues, but then how we regard them? First of all, the government came with amnesty process that was opened, but also you look at, there were children who were taken. There are people, because amnesty means you are now taking responsibility for the atrocities you have committed. But some of these people who got amnesties were below 16. So how would a child who was taken maybe 7 or 8 years, come returning back home at 13 years, would be deserving to be regarded as a criminal because he has been forced to be taken away from home or to commit atrocities. So it brought a lot of issues that, first of all, the way amnesty was given in the name of blanket amnesty was wrong. The amnesty should have been given to people who deserve to be given amnesty. But because they turned amnesty to demobilization and resettlement package, you'll be given a blanket, you'll be given a small hand hose, you'll be given a small packet of jerrycans and a basin, only if you accept to take the amnesty. If you don't take amnesty, you walk back to the community, you don't get that. So because people are desperate to take these assets, they had to accept to be given amnesty. And a child of 13 years is illegal under international law. I think amnesty is supposed to be given to somebody from 18 years and above from the criminal hate bracket, criminal responsible hate bracket, not somebody below. Yes, we have victims who are coming back home. Some of them came back, they have been accepted. Some of them failed even to integrate in the society. Not everybody who was abducted would be regarded as a perpetrator. Majority of them came back as victims and they have been resettled in the community, they have been supported. The reason why the debate came a lot around Ochen, because Ochen was taken as a child, as young as he was. And then Ochen grew up in the rank because of the atrocities he has been. He was a very vicious commander. He grew up in the rank, and Ochen reached a point where he had the command responsibilities. So his charges is not because he was a child soldier, or the argument is not because he was taken as a child, he should be charged for the crimes he committed. Ochen reached a point that he was above 18 when he commanded certain atrocities, which he had power to walk away from the bush, to even set free thousands of people who were in his custody, to even refuse to obey the command of his senior, Joseph Kony, because I think part of the recording somewhere, they tap their communication. There will be always communication that you go and abduct, bring more doctors, bring more nurses. But Kony never, in any way, was telling, go and kill 2,000 people. Go and rape every woman. Go and do it. But Ochen went and he did all that. So meaning he was already above 20 years when he was doing all the things. So 30 years when he was doing it. So he had command responsibility. And that's why the charges that are put on him. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about, as a practitioner coming from a Western context, you spoke about localization and partnering with local communities, letting them lead to do their own needs-based assessment. As a Western practitioner, is there, when you're talking about partnership, is there any other way to partner other than just sending money? And have you seen that in What have you seen?
Yeah, I think there are so many ways of partnership. There should be always so many ways of partnership beyond resources. Let's say, for instance, I'll give an example. When war broke between Russia and Ukraine, and we were approached by the Ukrainian embassies, and then they asked us that we have so many cases of children and women who are victims of war, and we have expert psychologists and expert, psychiatrists here in Europe. But as qualified as they have never been, most of them have never been into active violent conflict. So unfortunately, we looked around look for skills in this nature. We unfortunately found that these skills exist mainly in Africa. So that means this is what has been going in Africa. And then when they contacted us and said, look, even when you contacted from Southern Africa, West Africa, your name kept on coming, and your organization is regarded as a lead institution, one of the lead institutions involved, and local initiative, which is involved working in this space. They use the word local, African initiative. And then they said, we want to ask you if you could help us work with the psychologists and psychiatrists in Ukraine, European psychologists and psychiatrists. So we eventually started now mobilizing experts from South Africa, from Uganda, from Kenya, from West Africa. And then we assembled them. We now started virtually engaging the training for Ukrainian psychologists and psychiatrists. So it was the first time ever that an African initiative would respond to European conflict. So in a way, we didn't have money. In as much as there's a lot of resources being poured towards Ukrainian response, we never got that funding. Why? Because people find it still problematic. Why should we give an African organization money to respond to European? Money come from Europe to Africa, then back to Europe. It didn't make a lot of sense for them. But for us, it was not so expensive because we had to use whatever little resources we had to engage in virtual connectivity and all of things that supported the process. But of course, we are happy that that sends a message that when it comes to the current global crisis, support can come from anywhere and can come in any form. It doesn't have to be from Europe, doesn't have to be from America, doesn't have to be from Africa. It can come from Africa to Europe, Europe to Africa, America, everywhere. So partnership can always be done in so many ways. The world has been simplified by use of technology. There can always be formal support, but of course, without resources, it is difficult to implement. Fortunately, Europe and America still holds the power to the resource that is needed to simplify the humanitarian response. So most importantly, it should be working towards how can we support the initiative, how can we strengthen, and that answers the question what we talked about earlier. When is the best time to repair the roof? I think it should be now. The best time to repair the roof should be when we realize that support can come from anywhere. At one point, I think COVID also taught us that we cannot declare that the safest part of this world is this part. There will be a moment that one part of the world could be inhabitable. And that means we need to spread our net and be able to leave support processes in other parts of the world. So I think that's what I could say, that any part of the world can support, but also aware of our capacity. What we did in Africa, we only give them our skills, our experience to support in Europe. But you are here with the resources, you should be able to support that, provide that advanced support to strengthen that capacity in higher age. Yes.
Thank you very much for this, Victor. You remind me of the wine, another activity that I believe doing.
Yeah.
He has a similar passion. He moves from just doing activism and going into politics. He became a member of parliament. He represented his constituency, and he eventually contested for presidency against Museveni. And I don't know, with the passion you have and the courage you have, knowing many atrocities and the injustices happening in the country, has it ever crossed your mind that you may just be the leadership that Uganda has been waiting for, and you want to go into mainstream politics to see how you can actually address those atrocities and injustices of the people?
Okay, that's a very political question. First of all. Okay, now that I've taken water, his question is, am I willing to become the president of Uganda? It's being diplomatic. Yeah, what about that? I think anybody can be a leader, right? But also the other thing we need to think about something here. Yeah, anybody can be a leader. Let me quote from what you are one of the wonderful presidents we had in our generation. Made a quote. Barack Obama said that there is no excuse in not trying. So you cannot just have an excuse that I cannot try, I cannot do anything. But I think what is important in so many ways, if you ask me, with my history, with my journey, if I can be a better leader, I think I can be a better leader. Because if the leadership is not about transforming people's life, then it's not worth it. It's not worth my energy. So my approach to leadership would be definitely that any leadership that comes in should be about giving people opportunity to at least breathe. Let citizens, for once, have a chance. But what I've been following, the animosity around political engagement has always been about my power, my party, my tribe, my region. The dilemma Uganda has today is the current leadership has taken too long in power to the point that every other tribe thinks after Museveni is their turn. Every region thinks that after Museveni is their region, is their turn. So when it comes to politics of our turn, that's a problem. So the question is, the best approach based on the situation, when you analyze and look around, I think you will find that you should wonder if Uganda can be led by one president, one party, after the current leader that has taken so long in power and built a complete new culture that when you get to power, never leave, enrich your people, deprive of other population. It will be a very loving encounter to help the country move beyond that kind of narrative, beyond that culture. Yes, so many important opposition leaders have come. Besigye has always been the leading, probably the most supported opposition leader ever Uganda has ever had. He tried his best. Bobi Wine, among many other persons, have also tried their best. And the thing is, when you sit down and reflect, why is that so many people who mean so well, the technocrats, the intellectuals, the brilliant brains who should play a role, have decided to shy away? It's because they felt that the environment has been so porous, the environment has been so partisan, the environment has been so ethnic. So it will only require a very committed space for people to think that we are not going, we first of all believe that Uganda cannot be changed by one person, not by one family, not by one party. It should be about all of us. Then how do we go to bring that transitional leadership where we are looking at a shared government aimed at maybe using one good term of presidency to reset the political arenas of the country? So I think it's something to think about, to explore, and see how we can pursue an agenda. And most importantly, we hope that whether we like it or not, let us promote a very reconciliatory politics where people are working together, not to pursue which party is going to lead us better, but to mobilize people, bring the usually most excluded. 40 years under one presidency. If you're in the sunshine part of that political leadership, you have enjoyed. If you're on the leeward side, you have really suffered. And it's so difficult for something to come out of a region, a section that has been put aside for 40 years. It's something that is very difficult, and that's why that narrative of our time, our moment is also a threat to mass atrocities. So yeah. Can I go to the back and come back to you? Very good. Yeah, you, yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'll speak up a little bit. So you mentioned this idea of preparing the roof when the sun is still out, like preemptive planning. And so I'm wondering from your perspective, with having worked in a transitional justice environment, what are some upstream mechanisms that like states that are in peacetime should be looking to implement? And are there any lessons that you've learned from working in transitional justice that you think could be applied successfully in upstream prevention?
Okay, I think it's about transitional justice, if I had it well, to sum it up my experience in that space. I think one of the fundamental environment or aspect of transitional justice, it should be about, is it about excavating history of pain and leaving it open? Or to use that history to spark the crisis now? Or is it about learning from the history, devising the means now, the new now, and pursuing agenda for the future? So I think the most important part of the transitional justice aspect of justice and accountability, which is so deeply rooted into the rule of law, aimed at strengthening the rule of law, in a way, a transitional justice approach that focuses at building the future, healing the wounds, helping the people to be part of the process to devise a future. Because no matter what we do, you cannot undo the past. You can only ease the pain, the tension, and all those things. And you can also create a new narrative. Let's learn from South Africa. I think one of the most important parts of South Africa, which we learned, Mandela did so many things, was celebrated. But the most important thing about Mandela's success was actually making sure that as South Africa was moving away from the apartheid leadership to the Black African leadership, he knew the next war was going to be the ethnic war. And that's why he said that in as much as I'm doing everything, the number one war to address as we're moving from apartheid leadership to South Africa is to make sure that all tribes are treated equal. So the fact that they made sure that 11 languages spoken in South Africa all became official language was the most important countermeasures in the post-apartheid era, which was meant to happen. Had it not done so, it was going to be a problem. So that kind of was the biggest achievement, that every tribe felt they are part of it, every community felt included, and although he knew one term, even maybe 2 terms will not be enough to change the long decades of suffering and all that, but at least he laid a foundation that would govern the political move. And of course, today South Africa still continues to struggle. From my side, I think what is important is to help people believe that, first of all, you cannot do injustice, cause injustice with impunity. Everything you do will always have to account for it. And secondly, lay the foundation for national healing and reconciliation, and most importantly, set up a progressive pillars for justice, for rule of law generally, progressive pillars for rule of law, and that should lead to a democratic process where citizens feel they own the process, they own the government. So the best aspect of transitional justice is the one that will ever devise a new country, take the country forward in a democratic path. So that would be my say. Okay. After you, then there was somebody in the back. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, still on the question of transitional justice, I would like you to say a few words about the current problematic nature of transitional justice on the African continent, specifically with the kind of tug of war going on between the African Union and the ICC. as you are aware, the African Union has already called for withdrawal of its members from the ICC, and they have decided not to cooperate with the ICC, namely prosecution whatsoever. So in light of this, what do you think should be the approach to transitional justice on the African continent?
Yeah, it's an important question. Aspect of transitional justice, also international criminal justice prosecution and all those things. And I do know for sure that the African Union once came up with the AU transitional justice policy framework, which I think they were even later. I think Uganda will come up with the transitional justice policy. So yes, the transitional justice policies at African Union level has been promoted. It continues to be advocated at all levels. But the problem with the transitional justice in the continent, like just let me pick from my country, is when you find people who are part of, the perpetration of the injustice are still in power, it's almost impossible to administer. It will become something very serious. They'll say, out of 4 pillars of transitional justice, an aspect they fear the most is aspect of truth telling. Because they will say, come on, we kill people to come to power. You want us to subject ourselves to civilian court? No, they will not accept that. So this is what I learned in my country, and I think this is also what is impacting the court at a continental level. So it could have been an alternative, because our African leaders started condemning the International Criminal Court and all those things, and they're saying, why is that they're not arresting other presidents from other regions? And which I found it very problematic argument to say that just because other presidents in other countries are not being arrested, you should say International Criminal Court is bad. Yet you are doing the same. Must it be a competition that if you torture my people, you also torture your people? I think the common sense is lacking, in a way to make that kind of argument that you don't want ICC because it's prosecuting African leaders. The question is, are the African leaders committing the crimes or not? I think let's be honest about it. It's not about whether the court is in the Hague or what. To me, it's about strengthening the pillars of justice and accountability. So the challenge that remains, the biggest aspect of transitional justice, the aspect of justice and accountability, will focus mainly on issues of truth telling, which holds the leaders in power accountable. And that's what they don't like. Yeah.
I was wondering if, from your personal experience, if integration or reintegration is generally an ideal option, not only for returning perpetrators themselves, but also the communities that they're returning back into, and also like what the greatest factors are in the process of reintegration that spur either violent tendencies or relapse back into actual organized violence.
Yes, the integration has got so many aspects, and I think the beautiful part of it is an opportunity for people to resume, first of all, to their community, and it helps not only the victims themselves, but the families of the victims. And we're talking about, for instance, the biggest cry I hear every day from the community is the pain that families feel they may never see their children who are taken. And they're demanding that government should be able to account for that. So that is where the problem. So reintegration eases the pressure from the community. But also, these people are suffering, these people are dying. Let's say even from the aspect of recently when we did the stock taking of the victims who applied to participate before the International Criminal Court as witnesses, we found that about 27% of them have died. They have waited since they are qualified by the court, and they have been waiting for when will the arrest be effected, and then they could also participate in the process. So in that context, the integration challenge that comes in is actually an aspect of insufficient resource towards the resettling population, whether it be child soldiers, whether the formerly displaced population, whether be, if they come, these people come with a very important need that needs to be attended, that needs to be addressed. And I think that's where the challenge comes. If it's not supported properly, the prospect for relapse is so high. And we have seen it in northern Uganda, for instance. We work in the communities, we work also in the prisons. When we go to the government prisons, we don't even ask the inmates if you were once abducted or not. We don't. What we do, we just ask, do you remember your amnesty number? They will all say yes, yes. And they just say that. Anybody who has got the amnesty number, that means that person has been impaired. So we don't, without asking, because we want to avoid them being stigmatized. Stigma is so heavy at the grassroots level. Stigma is so heavy in the community. And without closer follow-ups, the chances of relapse is very, very high. Because when they go back, they're being called names, they're being called killers, they're not being supported, and then they end up committing crimes. The only thing they start fighting, they want to fight until somebody dies. And then they end up in prisons. And you find some of them saying, my life, like one of them told me a few years ago, that I'm so unfortunate that my life has been about protection. When I was in the camp, I was surrounded by the government troops. And then when I was abducted from them, I was taken to the captivity, I was surrounded by the soldiers. It was gun around me at home, gun around me back in the community. When I came back home, I was arrested because I found somebody was grabbing our land, because I tried to fight to defend our land physically. They arrested me. So my life has been about gun, gun, gun. I'm now in prison. Gun around me from the time I was born. It's been surrounded by gun, was abducted under gun, came back home, I'm now in prison, all guns around me. So that relapse is very, very high. And in that kind of trend, if that person has the opportunity to go to join another rebellion, he will go immediately. So it needs a lot of support, but always the problem comes, if not well done, it can be more costly. Yeah. I think you first, then I come to you. You address your first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Victor. In one of your presentations, we talked about how children that were products of rape of their mothers who have been abducted by the rebel soldiers coming back home, their mothers coming back home, and the children who were these products being rejected by the community or the family themselves, and then that most of these children are they've gone and formed their own gang. And so what is the government of Uganda, and most importantly your organization, what are the steps you are taking? Because to me, I feel these gangs that are forming, they might be small cells, but it's taking time of in light of reoccurrence of what has happened. So these children, they are rejected by their own families, they don't have a case, and they go out there and they're like cherry for the picking for the people that actually need them, and they can now be groomed. So that cycle of violence, it just continues. So what do you know that the Ugandan government, and what is your own organization doing to stop this from happening?
Yeah, that's very true that we have so many, because war took so long in northern Uganda, for decades, and a lot got destroyed. And you can imagine a society where majority had the unskilled youth, those older youth who have now produced children, who are even not going to be skilled at all. There are people who have been to school and dropped out without any qualifications. And then they make the majority, followed by people, few who have attained certain skills, and they are not yet even got formal jobs. They are unemployed, and they make the second largest population. But then it comes into the society where always politically, for some political correctness, government is always too quick to declare war is over. That is universal, right? And just as soon as the gun goes silent, states will always declare war is over. International communities will do a few things, then they move on. But they don't address the underlying issues that remain so deeply rooted in this case, the factors that involve the needs of these people, the integration of these people. And then in this particular case, there are so many women who are taken as child mothers, and they produce children in captivity. When they could come back, sometimes the families of the mothers will not accept them. Somebody comes with 4 children, and they say, no, we are only accepting you as our daughter, but we're not taking your children because they are fathered by the rebels. So that's really where the dilemma is, and these kids, they're rejected, and the government also struggling and battling with the issues of statelessness, because they were born in Central Africa, they were born in DRC, and now they have come back to Uganda, and their mother doesn't even know their fathers. Or some of them came back home without any of their parents. But then there are maybe close family members just come and say, these children belong to the daughter or belong to the son of this family. Then from nowhere you see a group of 4 or 5 children being brought to you. You say, no, I don't know who they are. And they are homeless, they don't know where they belong, they don't know what to do. And now, because there's no proper integration processes by the state, what we do as on our own, because there's also a limit of how much NGO can do. Of course, we remain available for support, ongoing support, but when it comes to economic empowerment scheme, which is so key in reintegration, is where we have problems, we have dilemmas. So we try our best, we keep on advocating, and we also keep on working with the government to try to make sure that there's a way, a formal way of support, because if nothing is done, these are ready to, forces are ready for recruits, and they will always be on standby to do anything possible. So it's a challenge, it's a dilemma, not only for Uganda, but I think also this issue of statelessness. There's no proper governing. I think Uganda is not yet a signatory to that convention, so it makes it really very difficult. And I think that's where the challenge is coming now. I think it was you, yeah.
This is a tough one. I think, the Great Lakes.
Okay.
Uganda is not too far. I used to go to Kisoro with my dad when I was a child. So, Karibu. Now, you know what's going on in the Congo, of course, in DRC. And there are so many aspects here that I don't even know where to begin. The transitional, 96, Kabila comes in, Rwanda helps Kabila to take power. Now it's gone. Now we have Tshisekedi now bringing in, and this is one of my main questions, South Africa. What do you think about the role of South Africa there now? Because I understand they brought a case to the Hague. Now they are in the Congo, bringing soldiers to fight again, alongside Tshisekedi, who is fighting the Tutsi. At the Rwanda, I don't know. What's your take about it? Because I'm new to this area and I'm trying myself to understand what I come from that region. But I have to be honest that I'm learning from many people here, the theory, and you are the practitioner. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this kind of confusing situation.
Yeah, I'm going to try.
How can we deal with these kind of things and the hate that is going on? I can see already some genocide coming.
Yeah. I hate to say that you want to be unconfused, but I don't know if I can unconfuse you in that context. So, but I think, yes, a very confusing situation because, unfortunately, in the history of time, over the last 30 years, there has never been a day when there's no war in the Great Lakes region. There's always been war. Either every day there's war going on, bloodshed going on, and all those kind of things. And then if you look at the history of the conflict, also has always had a very strong ethnic ingredients, the dynasty kind of arrangement that goes on across, but also the geopolitical significance hovering all over the mineral resources in DRC makes it so complicated. East Africa or the Great Lakes region is such a region with so much potential that has been totally destroyed by politics. Congo, if I always say this, God asked me one question now. What would be one thing that I would give you if you ask? I would say, God, give peace to Congo. Congolese have suffered so much. I'm from Uganda, but it pains, it hurts. Every day they're fleeing and beautiful human beings, beautiful women, beautiful boys and girls, so much potential. But if you see the amount of suffering these guys are going through, it breaks your heart. And of course, it was very interesting to see South Africa took a very bold step, dragging Israel to ICJ, which is a good commitment in the global space of holding each other accountable, geopolitically. But of course, it faced massive criticism that it closes its eyes, it pays blind eyes to the situation on the continent and running to try to tackle the situation in the Middle East. They see what's happening in Congo every single day. The war in many parts of the continent. What did they want that took them to ICJ? Was it at careless because they don't like Israel? What about Congo? What did they do about Congo? Like you're saying it, yes. Then of course we can still hold each other accountable one way or another. But of course, this is a kind of discussion that we may never have and see a single answer. It's something that provokes our thinking at the continental level and at the local level. And then right now there's a deployment going on. East African forces are moving from DRC. The agreement has expired and they have not been renewed. With the war drums going on, government threatening to attack each other, Congo just had their own elections. The role the neighboring countries are playing in destabilizing each other in the region is just overwhelming. And then now we have forces from SADC, are the one replacing the East African forces in Eastern DRC. And we have the history from the time when there was a coalition force in Rwanda and Uganda trying to overthrow Kabila. It took the SADC forces to come and repel these forces. So the question is, now that SADC is coming on and taking over, are they going to change the trend and the trajectory? And also where the bad relationship between, especially Kigali and South Africa. So it's a big mess. Talk about mass atrocities, as I said it. There's always a window for mass atrocities in the Great Lakes region. And unfortunately, we have established the permanent status that windows of mass atrocities. Anything can happen anytime. But what are we going to do? Should we wait until it's rain, but then rain, then we start repairing the roof, or we start it now? So it's I don't know if I have any answer to that, but I can say your concern is very legitimate and it's exactly the crisis we have at hand on how to manage and mitigate the situation. It is very political, but it comes down to leadership. As long as certain particular political leaders are still in power, I do not see much stability in that region. It will always be destabilized as long as some particular leaders are still in power. So lack of political change in some arenas will probably be the problem. Yeah.
Okay, sadly, we're at time. Please join me in thanking Victor Ochen for sharing his story. Thank you, Victor. We're looking forward to many years of supporting your work. So I'm partnering with you on this. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for allowing me, and thank you so much for coming. Let us keep on learning. I will keep on learning from you, learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you all.